Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope you all well and are having a nice weekend. So, I'm going to take a moment to center. I had some things I was exploring and sharing and decided not to. They're not quite where they need to be yet to be shared, and it was a little too spontaneous, even for my taste. So, today I wanted to continue a little bit on our focus on nature and this summer a little bit. And working with nature. I think it's a theme that I've had throughout my teachings over these last several years. And the summer period gives us extra space, time, days off, opportunities to decide what we would like to do, how we want to go about doing it, and where, for how long. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to work on practice, on prayer, and working with nature. It's a lot of what I've done in the past for myself. And today, actually, a perfect example of this came up. There, in any given city or community, there's many different areas, homes, mini communities, different streets, and how they're laid out, the materials used for the houses, how tightly the homes are against each other or not, the aesthetic look, and how embedded, how ingrained the homes are with nature, or how removed they are from nature. And I made a turn to a very, very small little street next to a really big new construction of small subdivision of a neighborhood, very modern. And when I turned into the street, the energy completely shifted. There were very old trees, well, for, I don't know, 70, 50, 80-year-old trees, which is unusual in this area because most trees were planted by us. And some of these areas weren't even developed that long ago. So this was an area that I think these people build these homes a long ways back, and they were old trees, and they were clearly taken care of. Large branches were cut off and properly sealed. So it was someone who took care of the trees and preserved their longevity. So there was a huge, tall canopy over the homes. 6 or 7 rather large homes with nice pools in the back. And I just got a sense that it was one extended family who have owned these homes for a couple generations, I think. It just gave me that sense. I don't know one way or the other. But what struck me was the energy. Felt very still, very whole, very healing. I thought to myself, boy, I would love to spend a whole day here by one of those pools, just bathed in this energy of this environment. And as I was leaving this little area, I just noticed how many trees there were and how it provided shade over most of the area. and it created a pocket in an otherwise busy area with a lot of concrete, a lot of very modern homes, maybe with one tree in front and very little other trees until it's another 30 feet away. There's another little tree and little bushes. This was very, very different. And I spoke to someone about this, and they mentioned to me how this kind of linked with my theme of wanting to go into nature this summer and the importance of getting into nature and how this would be a very good example of this. And I'm like, wow, that's really good. So here I am talking about it. The feeling of it was immediate when I entered this space. And it really felt like a little pocket, a little bubble. And somehow the bustle and the energy around it did not enter into it. And when I was there, it occurred to me how important it is to have these little pockets of refuge in our lives, to create them in our bedroom, in our homes. If we have control of the area around our homes, what do we grow? What color are our walls? All of these things have an effect on us. And the importance of creating a refuge, even if it's a small little space, because there's the world out there, and then there's where we each individually live. And it's so important for it to be healthy and clean and uplifting, because if that little pocket isn't those things, then where else do we find it? I mean, we might find it out there, but in this world, really? We could, but where we really have control is where we choose to be, how we choose to make it, and where we choose to go. And it has an effect on us. And as it affects us, changes us hopefully for the better, or calms us, or heals us, or allows us to have a rest, then when we leave those areas, we leave better and stronger and more able, with an ability to maintain a certain posture, certain vibration, a little higher, a little stronger, a little wiser, a little calmer, a little lighter. And so that's what I propose to you all to consider for these next 3 months of summer. The spiritual path is all about decisions. And so as one makes plans, what are those conscious choices that you make? Now, I've gone to big cities on vacation and had a fun time, and that could be very healing too, if that's what you need. So it's not necessarily always quiet, peaceful, tranquil nature. It could be in downtown Paris, going out to cafes and clubs with friends and having the time of your life. That itself could also be medicine. Part of it, of what makes it medicine or not, what is positive or not, is how does it affect you when you come back? Are you uplifted or are you depleted? Are you healthy or are you less healthy? Are you whole or do you come out wrecked? Do you see? How effect does it have? And so as we're going into thinking about practices with nature and working on removing ourselves a little bit from our society, you could also take it in a different way. The importance is on bringing elements that we have control in our lives to that they may affirm us, strengthen us, and we make choices that help us on our walk, on our path, that make us, help us be better people, and to have experiences that could be the equivalent of driving into a dead-end street surrounded by 5 or 6 rather large homes and a canopy of old trees, leaves 2-3 stories high, and realize you've entered an energetic pocket that the whole world doesn't penetrate in, and that you could be there if only for a couple minutes, but you leave replenished. And as we go off into nature, into parks, camping, or just a hike, or a city park, or up in the mountains for a day or 2 or 3 or 10 days somewhere, we engage with the space. We allow the space to speak to us, and we give ourselves permission to release into the space, to try to touch in with healing, of harmony, of letting go all those things we've accumulated from the stress, the momentum, the speed of our everyday society, how quickly everything needs to be. The compression, the tightness, the anxiety, the intensity. When we go into places like this, it's all those things aren't there, and we're confronted with space, less compression, no intensity. And those environments scare a lot of people, because what do I do? Who am I? Oh my God, who am I if I'm left away from this and I have to actually contemplate these things? It can be very scary. Who am I when the tension releases? What do I do? And we learn to release the stress. We have the names of God to help us. And as I took a little mini vacation of all of 6 hours, and yes, they don't have to be long if you don't have the opportunity for it to be longer than that. I worked on the names of God, and I engage with different names, and I try not to put on it that with this name I get this effect, or this name does this. I kind of go in with an open mind, and I think, oh, I'm going to do this name, and it just naturally transitions. And when I see the same pattern arise with the same name, it gives me confirmation that my intellectual understanding of what a name does is correct. Because I have, oh my gosh, that's what I had last time with this name. Oh, and the time before. Actually, was there ever a time I didn't have that same reaction with this name? And I realized no. And when I had a certain reaction with the name, I remember I said this to my students several times before. And here it is confirmed again. And I'm like, I've got to mention this to them again because I'm having confirmation of it again. So when people are new, they have that guidance of, well, he has this experience with this name. Let me try this as opposed to all the others, because he's pointing about this name for this specifically. Though he does say other names do that, but somehow for this one, it tends to have a lot of this effect. And the name that I used was Yahweh Rapha, Yahweh that heals. And what I realized when I was going be back and forth between Yahweh Ori, the one we've been practicing on, the light of Yahweh, Yahweh my light, and Yahweh that heals, Yahweh Rapha. I've had whole teachings on this. I think the most recent one might have been in January, February, in the fall as well, last spring. It's been there've been quite a few times. It's very physical. Yahweh Rapha, very much physical healing of the body, of the mind. It has a very healing aspect. It was very interesting on working on the healing of the body, and that name transitioned from Yahweh Ori to Yahweh Rapha. And when it hit Yahweh Rapha, just saying it now, I literally felt it in my skin and in my bones do something on a very, very physical level. So I wanted to share my experience with that as something for you to consider and to try, if you feel called to see if that may be of assistance. As I said, different names have different effects in different ways. But you may have just as a profound experience within a completely different name. When we go into nature, the beauty, the harmony, the tranquility, a certain symmetry, simplicity, sort of pulled back something more natural and whole. And if you think about it, those qualities, those descriptions I've just mentioned, aren't they all those things we wish we lived and had within ourselves and in our lives? Aren't those all descriptions of health? Things we wish we lived in our thoughts, in our bodies, and in our everyday lives? Right? Who wouldn't want to have all of these elements? And so it's helpful when one seeks that in one's life, everyday life. Why not go to an environment that literally is that? You go to an external environment that has the qualities that you wish to have within yourself. If you wish to heat up your body because you're cold, you go into a hot bath, an environment of hot water outside of ourselves to heat up the inside of ourselves. If we have a fever, very serious fever, what do people do? They take very, very cold water and sometimes even water with ice cubes in it, and they put themselves in it. So the cold on the outside cools down the inside. So if we wish to create a more harmonious or change the environment within ourselves, since we're so influenced by the world outside of us, because we're very sensory oriented, we hear, we see, we feel, most of which is projected outwards, not inwards, right? So if we're in an environment that has the qualities we wish to have more of, or wish to swap out the opposite that's inside of us and bring in some of the qualities that's out there in those environments, why not go into those environments? See, a beach has a certain quality. Early morning is different than noon and is different than sunset. Woods, forests have certain qualities, flat forests. Or do you go into a place with a lot of granite? Do you go to the low desert or to the high desert? Two different qualities of energy. And you learn how it affects you and what you get out of reach. out of each, green and grassy, or more bleak and sterile? Do you go to Utah with red clay, red rocks, beautiful? Or do you go someplace that's a very green, lush forest with little rivers running through it? Or do you go to a beautiful city like Florence or Paris or Sydney that has certain qualities that you feel will enhance you because you need that, whatever that is? Because there's a little imbalance within yourself that would be helped by that. So you live a life that's very intentional, where you try to work with what interests you to bring in a greater harmony. Yes? I will focus on nature, but I mention these other things because for some people that won't be exactly where they're at. But I want to open the door to something wider so they could take the principles that I'm discussing and apply it to where they're at. When we've created a shrine or a prayer space, way back when, right? And if for people who, I haven't mentioned this in a while, please look at the archives, which I'm going to finish updating soon. I know I keep saying that. And the HP Shalom archives, just Google it. It's there. You'll see it. Find the one that deals as a PDF. I'll place the link in this right after I'm done in the little description, so people can easily click. There's a PDF, and put in altar and how you describe to create your own prayer space in your home. And when I was speaking about this several times, I said you have to make it your own. What objects? What speaks to you? What kind of light source? What kind of incense do you choose? How well lit? How do you orient it? Is it in a room by itself, or do you just choose to put it in your bedroom? Now, you might only have your bedroom, or your bedroom might also be your living room because you live in a studio. So there's not a lot of options, but what space, what corner, why? How do you choose to make the space? Even if it's 2 feet by 2 feet. How do we choose to lay out our living area? It becomes personal. What helps us find our center? Our outside is very important on how we are becoming, and we always are becoming. And if you're not a native speaker, just put in the active verb becoming and seeing what it means. I might Google it in a minute. We're always becoming. We're always changing. We're always becoming something. To become something. We're always becoming, ing. So what elements do we bring? What prayers? What trips? What actions? What sports? What words? What thoughts? What everything? All part of our becoming into the future. And I think with nature this summer, we'll discuss a little bit about how nature could help us find the balance. You know, in the tree of life, the central column is about finding the balance of the two polarities of the other two channels on either side. The openness of the openness of the feminine, and the focus of the masculine, the action versus the space, thought versus non-thought. The whole spectrum of duality going on here. The balance is finding the equilibrium. And in equilibrium is found the openness and the connection with God. When everything's in balance, everything flows. And we're naturally in balance wherever we are. But until we live in that perfect balance, we learn to find the elements in our lives, things in our lives that help bring it about. The coolness to the fire to the cold, the just the middle perfect spot where things all sort of fit. And we can learn to rest and sit there with God. The Shekhinah flows with us, and we flow with the Shekhinah. And life becomes something very different. So, why don't we take a little moment to practice? I want to think which name to use. And you know what? I'm going to do the name that you feel called to today, or whatever practice you feel called to do. What helps you find your harmonious place that brings peace and harmony to where you are right now? Remember to breathe. Remember to relax. We're not meant to hold things in. So it's always about the circulation. If we're able to circulate and let go, the imbalances naturally work their way through. Our body naturally is made to return to balance. Now, sometimes we need external things to help that, medicines and things, because it's a little too skewed for the body to do it on its own. But normally the body is able to find its balance if we're able to give it the space to, I guess, rebalance itself. And going out into nature provides a lot of space where we could think and let go, where we could feel and let go, where we could just rest on the earth and allow the energies of the planet to move through us and remove things that don't belong. Just like the names move through us, and the names add things, and it removes things, brings about a perfect equilibrium. This planet is the greatest gift from God, one of the greatest gifts from God. And in its purity, when we go to a clean place, not too influenced by us, the elements are in balance and they're naturally healing. So by us going into these places, drinking the water, eating the food, being out and about, being as connected to it as possible, our body naturally picks up on it and harmonizes to that place. And it's profoundly rebalancing and healing. Finding what we need from the outside and allowing it to come in is an act of intelligence. We don't always have to just do it on our own. There's a lot of things out there that we just have to notice and touch into and bring into our lives to help bring about an inner peace, bring about the inner shalom. So how about 2, 3 minutes if people need to go to the bathroom, and then we'll begin. Okay. So feel free to use the name you wish. And also, I mentioned this before, but I find myself doing it. So I wanted to mention it again. For those who have prayer beads, sometimes you don't need to say anything when you move the beads. Sometimes I like to walk and hike, and I have the beads in my hand. And sometimes I say names, sometimes I don't. But what I find it interesting, and maybe it's because of years of doing this, but just by moving the beads, my mind feels very anchored and still. And it leads to a place of a certain spiritual contemplation. And as one does the practice and it enters a rock, just most of the beads we use are rocks or crystals, it holds the frequency of our practice. And just by moving them, we're actually doing the names because we're putting our energy from our hands as we're moving it. And so we're emanating that frequency, whether we realize it or not. And it is a way of engaging with a hike or whatever, but also making it profoundly spiritual and religious without necessarily doing what we call to be praying or what we call to be reciting the names. But yet by somehow moving it, the act of hiking becomes a real spiritual practice, as well as walking with a contemplative intent as well. But I sort of wanted to mention that, especially when you don't have a lot of time to become still and anchored or a couple days to decompress. Sometimes just walking with it helps shift our frame of mind, helps bring in elements of a practice to where we are at that moment and help us touch in a deeper way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So, why don't we do about 20 minutes of practice together? I'm going to leave you to start as you wish, and I'm not going to say anything. When we practice, we start where we are, and we learn and discover, and we develop the skill to work with that space. But here we're also a group practicing at the same time. So we uplift and we empower and help each other just by the nature of our collective practice. That we're all orienting towards the names or our practice, that's our study, that's all in with regard to God or these particular energies and frequencies. And so we all harmonize in that way. And we all are able to assist each other. And it's also okay to have normal prayers for those who need healing, who are in grief, in pain, or have someone who is, or if they need help, material or otherwise. It's a good time to also do those prayers, normal prayers. So I call it more normal, traditional prayers. More traditional might have been a better word, where we could ask and pray for things. It's an open space that as a community, we touch in together during this time. And at least for me, it's one of the most beautiful aspects of tuning in twice a week. So let's begin for about 20 minutes. May our prayers be heard. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your weekend, and see you all on Wednesday.